streets of Paris were glowing that night, the kind of glow that makes the city look like a secret. Cameras lined the barricades outside Balenciaga, their lenses already fogged from the heat of bodies pressed too close. Every whisper said the same thing. Meghan Markle was about to arrive. It was meant to be her resurrection, the return of the Duchess turned global icon. But when the black car door opened and she stepped out, the energy shifted in a way no stylist could fix. The crowd didn't roar, it paused. Flashes went off, but they felt routine, mechanical, like muscle memory rather than excitement. The city of light blinked, unimpressed. She walked as if she could command warmth from stone. The posture perfect, the jaw high, the practiced smile, a smile that used to melt the internet now landed like a question mark. The security detail moved first, cutting a path that didn't need cutting because nobody dared come close. No red carpet frenzy, no swarming editors begging for selfies. Just silence, thick and strange. Inside, the front row seats filled with names that mattered. Anna Wintour, Bella Hadid, Dua Lipa. But even they looked away, pretending to scroll or fix a strap. One stylist later said, "You could feel the air freeze when she entered. Like Paris itself refused to clap." The whispers began before the first model walked the runway. Not the harmless kind, the other kind. The kind that moves through perfume clouds and backstage corridors until everyone believes it. They said standing near her wasn't pleasant. That the scent around her wasn't Chanel 5 or Dior. It was panic. A makeup artist claimed her team had gone through cans of body mist and it still wasn't enough. Another joked, "You can retouch makeup. You can't retouch air." No one laughed out loud, but the story spread like cigarette smoke. By the time the show ended, every assistant knew the phrase, cheap perfume and stress. It wasn't cruelty. It was ritual. In fashion, gossip replaces applause. And that night, gossip became her soundtrack. What she wore didn't matter anymore. The details, though, were brutal. Her outfit wasn't designed for her. It wasn't even gifted. Balenciaga had loaned her a look, a last-minute favor more than an invitation. The shoes, black, plain, one-night use only. No custom fitting, no alterations, no handwritten note from the creative director. Just an instruction, return everything by morning. To outsiders, it was fashion. To insiders, it was a coded message. The house didn't see her as muse, only as marketing. She didn't know, or maybe she did, that in Paris, borrowing without belonging is worse than being absent. When a celebrity wears a sample with tags still hidden inside, it means you're decoration, not legacy. The same city that crowns stars can smell pretenders a mile away. So when Meghan took her seat, pretending not to notice the distance between herself and everyone else, she was already the story and not the kind she wanted. Hours later, when the after-parties began, she didn't go. Her team claimed exhaustion. But the truth that leaked from drivers and staff told something darker. She asked to take a drive. "Just a quick loop," she said. "I want to see the city lights." The car slid through the glowing veins of Paris until it reached a tunnel, the Pont de l'Alma. Locals froze when they heard. Because that's not just any tunnel. That's where Princess Diana's life ended. At first, her rep brushed it off. Coincidence. Traffic route. Nothing symbolic. But no one in Paris bought that story. People who had worked with her whispered that she knew every detail of Diana's final night. That she'd watched the funeral footage more times than anyone admitted. That she spoke of Diana like a myth she was destined to complete. So how could she not know the significance of that tunnel? She did, and maybe that's why she wanted to see it. The same way an actor visits a set before filming a scene. For her, grief had become branding, and symbolism was just another accessory. The next morning, French tabloids ran the photos. There she was, scarf pulled tight, face glowing under streetlight gold. "A duchess remembers," one headline said. But the city read something else between the lines. She's chasing a ghost. People who once adored her for defying the palace now pitied her for needing its reflection. Because this wasn't rebellion anymore. It was repetition. Behind the scenes, another contradiction surfaced. The same woman who denounced the British press for exploiting Diana's tragedy had partnered with CBS, the American network that once paid for and aired those horrific crash photos. That network used Diana's final images for profit. And decades later, who sat in its primetime chairs giving exclusive interviews about victimhood and truth? Meghan and Prince Harry. The circle was complete, and painfully ironic. The son mourning his mother returned to the same cameras that sold her suffering. The woman claiming to protect him from the media had become its most loyal collaborator, Paris noticed. Paris always notices. The same journalists who once wrote glowing essays about her compassion now wrote about her contradictions. They didn't hate her. They'd just stopped believing her. Her presence at Fashion Week had been meant to scream relevance. Instead, it whispered desperation. From the outside, it looked like confidence. Silk coat, diamond studs, the cool tilt of her head. But up close, people saw the exhaustion. One stylist said her smile looked taped on. Another said she's still auditioning for a role that ended years ago. And maybe that's the truth. Maybe she wasn't chasing fame anymore. Maybe she was chasing a feeling. The one Diana had when the world loved her without condition. But love built on imitation can't last. By the time the show lights dimmed, Meghan Markle was no longer the guest of honor. She was the rumor everyone was too polite to stop. Cameras followed her exit, flashes bouncing off glass doors, but there was no frenzy, no madness, just the quiet sound of heels against marble. Paris, the city that crowns queens and crushes pretenders, had already made up its mind, and as the car door shut and she disappeared into the night, someone standing near the barricade said softly, she wanted to be seen like Diana, but Diana never had to ask. The words hung in the air like perfume, sweet, fading, and impossible to erase. By dawn, Paris had already moved on to its next obsession, but her name lingered in hushed conversations over espresso cups and cigarette smoke. Assistants traded stories like currency. She came to reclaim her power, one said, but the city didn't give her any back. The aftertaste of that night clung to everyone who had seen it. The tension, the silence, the way Meghan Markle smiled like she was performing for an invisible audience that no longer applauded. It wasn't hatred. It was emptiness. The kind that happens when mystery runs out of script. Back in her hotel suite overlooking the Seine, she stood by the window long after the curtains were drawn. The room smelled of roses and exhaustion. Her team hovered, phones buzzing with headlines that called her appearance unexpected and icy. She told them not to worry, that controversy meant engagement. But even she didn't believe it anymore. For a woman who had once mastered the art of controlling narrative, Paris had stripped her of direction. Every photo looked polished, yet none of them looked alive. She had walked into Fashion Week searching for resurrection and left feeling like a hologram. The calls from Los Angeles came quickly. PR strategists offered emergency plans. Brand advisors talked about pivoting the message. The words all meant the same thing: damage control. But the truth couldn't be styled away. Designers who had once courted her name were suddenly booked. Major publications skipped her mentions entirely. And the same colleagues who once praised her independence now whispered that she had lost touch with authenticity. She had built an empire on telling her truth, but the audience had stopped believing the story. The audience had stopped believing the story. People close to Prince Harry saw it too. His laughter sounded forced at press events, his eyes scanning rooms like a man searching for escape. The dream of California freedom had turned into a maze of scheduled smiles. When Netflix cooled, Spotify collapsed, and business deals fell through, the glamorous rebellion began to look like ordinary struggle. Friends said he missed structure, she missed adoration. They were both homesick for something that no longer existed. His mother's warmth, her own myth. Behind every closed door, assistants whispered about her obsession with reinvention. One week she wanted to be a humanitarian, the next a lifestyle mogul, then a director, then a speaker for mental health. Each version came with new branding decks and vision boards, none with longevity. The staff who survived the constant turnover said she spoke of impact, but feared stillness. She can't stand silence, one aide confessed. If the cameras stop clicking, she stops existing. That fear followed her everywhere. Even her return to Paris wasn't spontaneous. Weeks of planning, calculated angles, a stylist flown in from New York, a perfume mixed to mirror Princess Diana's favorite floral notes. Every detail curated to create resonance. But resonance can't be manufactured. When she walked that carpet, the emotion she wanted wasn't reflected. It was deflected. People saw not elegance but effort. And effort in Paris is invisible. It means you're trying too hard. Industry insiders later admitted that the trip was never about fashion. It was about relevance. The Duchess who once commanded sympathy had become a headline fighting for space. Social media noticed. Even her loyal defenders hesitated before posting. The narrative was fraying. One viral comment said, "She's not evolving, she's echoing." And that was the wound she couldn't bandage. Because behind the glamour, the practiced grace, the polite speeches, there was a quiet truth. Meghan Markle wasn't hated. She was fading. Her team suggested a charity appearance the next day, a quick photo op with local children to soften the coverage. She agreed, but when the cameras turned on, something felt wrong. The smiles looked borrowed, the laughter staged. The children didn't know who she was. The photographers did, but even their flashes seemed hesitant. She handed out books, posed with teachers, thanked everyone in rehearsed French, but the magic never landed. When the car door shut again, the silence returned. She exhaled and whispered, "They've already decided." Back at the hotel, she scrolled through news feeds alone. Articles dissected her outfit, her expression, even her posture. Some called it poise, others pretension. None called it genuine. For a woman who built her brand on empathy, that loss of connection was fatal. She turned off the screen and stared at her reflection, the pearls, the contour, the eyes that no longer matched the smile. Somewhere inside, she knew Paris had given her what no interviewer ever dared to, a mirror. Meanwhile, across the ocean, conversations around Princess Diana resurfaced again. Old footage played on talk shows. Commentators compared their gestures, their media strategies, their heartbreak. The more they compared, the clearer the difference became. Diana's pain felt human. Meghan's felt produced. And that contrast spread like wildfire. Sympathy transformed into skepticism. Every new move she made was seen not as authenticity, but as choreography. By the time her flight departed Charles de Gaulle, her team was exhausted. They promised her that the next appearance, perhaps Milan or London, would turn things around. She nodded, but deep down, she knew something irreversible had shifted. The power of mystery was gone. The crown she tried to build out of narrative had cracked under its own weight. The woman who once captivated the world with courage had been replaced by someone chasing validation in borrowed clothes and borrowed light. When the plane lifted over the city, the skyline shimmered beneath her, a line of gold, bridges glowing like veins. For a fleeting moment, she smiled. Maybe she thought she could start over again, somewhere else. But the truth followed, quiet and patient. Paris doesn't destroy people. It reveals them. And what it revealed wasn't scandal or hatred. It was fatigue. The exhaustion of someone who had tried too long to turn perception into purpose. That night, social media debated whether she had been mistreated or misunderstood. But the city didn't debate. It decided. In the cafes of Saint-Germain and the studios of Avenue Montaigne, the verdict was unanimous. She had come searching for admiration and found indifference. The applause she heard wasn't for her. It was for the memory of what she used to represent. The world that once saw her as brave now saw her as rehearsed. And so, when the cameras finally dimmed and the headlines faded, all that remained was the echo of heels in a tunnel, the reflection of flashbulbs against glass, and the image of a woman who mistook attention for affection. Meghan Markle had walked through Paris like a reflection of Princess Diana, but reflections can't feel warmth. They only mimic light. The difference between them was never fashion, fame, or fortune. It was truth. And that night, truth won. The plane touched down in California before sunrise. Reporters were waiting at arrivals, but there were no smiles, no statements, no grand re-entrance. Just a woman stepping into daylight, eyes hidden behind dark glasses, her silence saying everything the interviews never could. Paris hadn't punished her. It had unmasked her. It had unmasked her.